Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It is our great pleasure to have you here for the 2016 Susan Sherman Distinguished Speaker evening. This annual lecture brings scholarship and art commentary of the highest caliber from around the world to St. Louis. Thelma Golden, Michael Kimmelman, Maya Lin, Glenn Lowry, Jerry Saltz, and Franklin Sermons are just a few of the extraordinary luminaries who have joined us here. And we are so delighted that this evening we have a Heidi Zuckerman with us. I first want to thank everybody for coming and joining us, but of course the biggest and the most heartfelt thanks go to Susan and David Sherman for allowing us this extraordinary event that indeed does kind of reach a high point on an annual basis. Thank you. So Heidi is the Nancy and Bob Magoon CEO and Director of the Aspen Art Museum. In her decade-long tenure at the AAM, Heidi has transformed that institution into a major contemporary art museum. Key to that transformation was the creation of a new building, which I'm dying to see, designed by Pritzker Prize-winning architect Shigeru Ban, which opened in 2014. Zuckerman led the strategic planning and fundraising for the building, a new facility, as well as the museum's endowment. She has nearly tripled the AAM's operating budget on an annual basis, so extraordinary transformation. The new building expanded the AAM's exhibition space from less than 3,000 square feet to some 17,500 square feet, and is Shigeru Ban's first permanent museum in the United States. Like CAM, the AAM is a non-collecting museum and offers free admission. So it's sort of a sister institution, which is very exciting. Before her time at AAM, Zuckerman served as the chair of the Art Curatorial Department at the University of California Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive as that institution's Phyllis Wattis Matrix curator. Prior to that, she served as the assistant curator of 20th century art at the Jewish Museum in New York. She holds a BA in European History from the University of Pennsylvania, a diploma from the Royal Society of Art, Christie's, London, and an MA in Art History from CUNY Hunter College. She also serves as the Art Network Chair for the Young Presidents Organization globally. And we are truly thrilled to have her here and welcome her heartily to share with us all of the wonderful things that she has been able to accomplish at AAM. Heidi, thank you.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks to the Shermans. I'm really happy to be here. I have been to St. Louis multiple times, and I'm a big fan of your community. So I have sort of a formal presentation. Happy to have questions throughout or at the end, whatever you guys like. And I want to make sure that everyone gets what they came for tonight. So happy to be able to talk about things that you're interested in, as well as what I prepared. So. I want to start out by talking about something that we undoubtedly agree upon, which is that art museums have the amazing potential to engage and ultimately help define community. They are places of connection, as well as places where one can seek out privacy, peace, and solace. Those are all things that I think are missing sometimes from our contemporary society. And so it's so important that museums exist and are supported by the community. So it is this purpose, this belief that drives the Aspen Art Museum's mission and vision. And what I'm showing you there are people standing in front of, on the left, some body prints by David Hammonds, an Yves Klein monochrome, and a Kool-Aid drawing by David Hammonds on the right. And that was one of the opening exhibitions at the Aspen Art Museum when we opened on August 2nd, 2014. But to back up, for nearly 35 years, the Aspen Art Museum, which, as Lisa noted, is a non-collecting contemporary art museum, prospered in a donated building by the banks of the Roaring Fork River in Aspen. It is the only AAM-accredited art museum on Colorado's western slope, and it occupies a central part of Colorado's cultural landscape and is a critical venue for visual arts in our state as well as our region. It is used to be a converted 19th century power plant. The original AAM building served the museum well, but museum leadership always aspired to construct a permanent new home in Aspen's core. When I assumed my role then as the director and chief curator of the Aspen Art Museum in 2005, a new building was a compelling idea, but frankly, I looked at what was unique about the town and the culture of our environment and the foundation of Aspen itself. Aspen is a unique place. There's a modern identity which is founded on skiing and recreation, but also on the importance of cultural pursuits. If a new facility was to be built, I felt that its foundation would first ultimately need to be built on Aspen's identity and credo, that of mind, body, and spirit. I wanted to activate the core principles through contemporary art and through projects that would reach people throughout the region and engage them wherever they went. So we needed to start off really from scratch. When I came to Aspen, the budget for the museum was the same size as the budget for the department that I ran at Berkeley, and we were down to very few staff members. Very generously, the board wasn't filling positions when they were doing the director search, so it gave me the opportunity to bring in a lot of people. But honestly, the goal of a new museum was not included in the search discussions. It was only after I had been hired that I was told that the board hoped for a new museum. And I said, which has now become sort of a famous quote, that we weren't going to build a new museum just because they were being built all over the country. We'd only build one if we deserved one. And people, I joke with people, deserve isn't necessarily an Aspen word, but people said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, nowhere to park your car, nowhere to hang your coat, donors tripping over school kids, literally bursting from the seams. So we set about really kind of writing the institution, came up with this mission, vision, and I talk about the museum now as a non-collecting contemporary museum, but when I came, the museum was not that. One of only 4 museums in the state that's accredited, the museum really tried to be all things to all people. And so if you would come and you liked cutting-edge contemporary art and you saw an exhibition of Navajo weaving or Japanese baskets, you might be disappointed. And if you were a committed collector of, interested party in Navajo weavings or Japanese baskets, and you came and saw a very avant-garde contemporary show, you might also be put off. So we really tried to focus on what we did that was essential to our community, and we realized that Aspen is a destination location. People don't come to Aspen by accident. So we really wanted to take advantage of what had previously been considered maybe a disadvantage and use our seeming disadvantages as opportunities. So during the early part of my tenure, we did evaluate every aspect of our institution and, as I said, rewrote our vision and our mission. We expanded our outreach into the community through endeavors that had us engaging with community member partners as diverse as the Pitkin County Jail, and we're still in the jail every Monday working with the guests, with other not-for-profits, and all schools within a 2.5-hour driving radius of the museum. That's how far we can get in a day, do our programs, and then come back. It's also, I think, important to indicate that we do all of these programs at our own cost. So when we're pitching the jail or we're pitching the schools on allowing us to come and take some of their time, we're not asking for any financial resources. So we're just asking for people's time. And recently, we were able to provide now free lunch when school groups come to the museum. Aspen is, in fact, a wealthy community, but within 20 minutes of Aspen, a substantial amount of the school kids are on lunch assistance. So people didn't necessarily want to come to the museum because they would miss lunch. This way, everyone who comes gets lunch. So it doesn't matter if you get lunch while you're at school or not, everyone gets free lunch. So that's a new program we added in the last year. So one of our most important relationships that we developed is a key strategic partnership with Aspen's other culture industry, recreation, specifically with the Aspen Skiing Company. And here you see 3 years of lift tickets. So when I came to Aspen, I saw people walking around with, the lift tickets hanging off their jackets. It looked like a generic mountain landscape. The ski co hates it when I say that. They say it's a very specific mountain landscape, but to me it looked like a generic mountain landscape. And I just thought we could do better. And so I pitched them on the idea of commissioning artists to create artwork for the lift tickets, and we've been doing that ever since. So on the far left you see the Jim Hodges. In the middle is there were 6 of them by David Shrigley, and then on the far right is one of 4 or 5 by Mark Bradford. And that's been a really interesting process to educate the employees of the ski company about art, and specifically the Jim Hodges, the Give More Than You Take. They wanted to trademark it because they didn't want Vail to use it, and I said, that it's actually not a slogan, it's an artwork, and so you can't trademark that. So that was an interesting kind of educational process to talk with their key management about text-based art, and it's been a really interesting process. The Mark Bradfords, one of them was so these are based on merchant posters, which he pulled down from his neighborhood in Los Angeles and then makes them into complex drawings. But what he did for his ski tickets was to use the actual merchant posters. So they're not camouflaged in any way or mitigated, and so they're very frontal. And there were lift ticket images that said, DNA testing, improve your credit file, and then there was also one for a sober living center. And so again, I'm pitching this to the ski co-management, and they were very uncomfortable, and not unlike the room tonight, pretty much everyone sitting there was white, and here's an African American artist from a impoverished neighborhood, knowing that he's creating a lift ticket image for an audience that was not dissimilar to the one I was speaking to. And they said, why is this relevant? Why should we do this? And I said, because, Aspen has such a high rate of drug and alcohol addiction and such a high suicide rate. And, what if you actually hand someone a lift ticket that talks about a sober living center, and it gives someone an opportunity to address some of these social issues that, we experience here as well. And we really try and use art to show that we have more in common than we do different. So that's one of our kind of unstated but goals that we address on a sort of regular basis. So in addition to the lift tickets, we try and bring art to the people in unexpected ways. And here you see, this is one of the first projects. It's Dice Toss by the Japanese artist Yutaka Sone down the super pipe at Buttermilk Mountain. And when I pitched them on the lift ticket and they liked that idea, I said, well, I have this other idea, which is to have this artist who's thrown these dice down the steps of the Sydney Opera House and in the desert in Texas, and what if we throw them down the super pipe where they have the X Games? And they were like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And I said, I'm not in Berkeley anymore, where we had to ask everyone about everything. So at the same time, we also have set about removing any of the remaining barriers to visiting the museum itself. And in May of 2008, thanks to the generosity of patrons John and Amy Phelan, we debuted a free admissions policy that Lisa referenced. And if there's any doubt that contributions made by those that can and will give the gift of cultural access, that makes a difference, I can tell you that the effect is huge. Our attendance numbers began to grow and to double. And that was originally started as a 3-year gift that then became a permanent endowment once we saw the positive effect that it had on the institution. We did make some preemptive steps to counter what we thought might be a negative impact of free admission, which was we cut the price of our memberships. Our lower level memberships, our individual memberships, and our family memberships. We dropped the price because in most institutions that's the key incentive for membership is you get in free. So if we were letting people in free anyway, we wanted to drop the membership price and then give them other membership benefits. So with the energy and enthusiasm for the project of a new building on the verge of bursting at the seams, along with an old facility, we started to begin the process. And we began that process we probably shouldn't admit this and so publicly, but without a feasibility study, without land, without an architect, and with an original working budget that represented about a third of the size of the actual budget, and we began a capital campaign. And sometimes I think if you actually know what you need to do, it's maybe too intimidating, and maybe it's better to start off being slightly unrealistic, right? What do they say, like, ignorance is bliss or something like that? But anyway, thanks to the continuing generosity and growing excitement for our project, we secured $30 million in the first 6 weeks of our campaign. Ultimately, our campaign closed at $75 million, which included a $20 or $25 million endowment. So in 2008, after an intensive worldwide search, we decided finally on our project architect, the amazingly talented and now Pritzker Prize-winning architect Shigeru Ban. Our architect selection committee's unanimous choice was very prescient, and though I don't use the word often, really perfect. The choice was perfect for us, perfect for our environment, and perfect for the exhibition of art. And from there, we secured a site in downtown Aspen and hired a general contractor in 2011. The 5 years that followed were at once grueling and rewarding, but at the heart of the entire process lies the promises of spaces for art and the endless and important possibilities that they provide for everyone interested and involved with the project and its future place within the community. So this is an installation view of the Klein-Hammond show in one of the galleries at the opening. So I can also tell you that no amount of planning will prepare us, for activating a new space. Projections and careful plans were made, but nothing can be truly known until you begin to interact with it. So virtually overnight, we quadrupled our square footage, we tripled our staff, and we added 30% to our operating budget. But all of these realities we knew going in, and we understood clearly and carefully planned for on paper. But they vanished as we opened the doors and began to inhabit the reality. We opened our building on August 2nd, and we had members opening just for that week, and then on August 9th, we did a 24-hour opening, because that's what I like to do. The biggest, grandest ideas possible that seem impossible, we try and make happen. So for our 24-hour opening, we were hopeful to get, 1,000 visitors, maybe 2,000. We printed 5,000 stickers, which we thought would last us several months. But here on the left is Governor John Hickenlooper, who's the governor of our state, Paul Shore, who was one of the co-presidents of our board, John Phelan, who's the other co-president, and Shigeru Ban. So here is Shigeru, one of the I really wanted a broad range of exhibitions to open with. So I wanted exhibitions that were known for, first one-person exhibitions by artists. I wanted exhibitions that had a historical importance, like the Klein-Hammond show. I wanted an exhibition that would honor the architect, but I didn't want to do an exhibition about our building because I thought that would be really boring and too insular. So Shigeru Ban is known for his humanitarian efforts. So this is the first exhibition ever organized to focus on his humanitarian architecture, and we did a very big book. And amazingly, he got the Pritzker Prize for his humanitarian work, about 60 days before our building opened. This is a project with the Chinese artist Sai Gao Cheng. It was called Black Lightning, and it was an explosion event over the base of Aspen Mountain. We could only do that because of our relationship with the Aspen Skiing Company and the long-term relationship that we had built with the fire department, the police, the mayor, etc. So trust over time. This was one of the most amazing things that happened, which was the day before the opening. A friend of mine said, "Hey, I have all these Buddhist monks staying at my house. Do you want them to come and bless your building tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." So he said, all right, what time should they come? And I said, well, we're opening at 5, why don't you have them come at 4? So sure enough, 4 o'clock, this van pulls up and these Buddhist monks come out and they come up to the roof deck sculpture garden, and the only people in the building were, my team, our team. And people, had been working 18 hours a day for weeks and months and years. This was like, we have people in Aspen who do what are called ultra marathons, 100-mile races, and the building of the new Aspen Art Museum was for sure, an ultra marathon. But so anyway, these monks at about 4 o'clock did this blessing, and I have to say it's, even today talking about it makes me teary-eyed. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my whole life. And then this past summer, we invited them to come back, and they did a mandala, sand mandala, and we had 1,000 people a day come and watch them. And they gave the sand out to the community, and then had a procession down to the river. And they're just incredibly generous people, and it's so fortunate to be able to open with that. So anyway, about 5 p.m. after the monks, about 4:30, we saw people standing outside, and we said, what are they doing? And they were lining up to come into the museum. And so they lined up down the block, around the corner, and down the next block. And so after we had been open for 24 hours, we had welcomed no less than 8,000 people into the museum, which was just totally incredible. And within our first year, we had 97,000 people. And, as of writing this talk a couple days ago, we have had more than 132,500 visitors. And to just give you some perspective, in a typical year at our old facility, we welcomed 25,000 visitors a year. So we basically quadrupled our attendance. So for the 24-hour opening, we did something every hour, kind of on the hour, and we partnered with people, institutions all around Aspen. So here you see a Jim Hodges work around the outside of the building, which said, "With liberty and justice for all." And we did a discussion that we co-hosted with the Aspen Institute, where we were talking about what liberty means in our contemporary society and what justice means as well. Here we partnered with the Aspen Music Festival and School, and interestingly, this is a kid from China who was studying at the Aspen Music Festival and School, but he also was an intern for us. And literally the day before our opening, there was an article in the New York Times that talked about the greatest new piano prodigy, and guess who it was? This guy who we had like Xeroxing our, reports for the board meeting. So anyway, he performed in one of the galleries downstairs, and it was one of the most incredible and moving presentations. We invited back the Aspen Art Museum was originally founded by 3 artists. 2 are still with us today, and we invited both of them back to give tours of the current exhibitions. So you see Dick Carter in the center there, and he gave a tour at, I think, 11 o'clock at night in the Klein Hammond show. We also collaborated with Jazz Aspen Snowmass, and they brought in a big swing band, and we set that up on the street. We were able to close off the street, and people were, dancing outside, and I don't even think those people were counted in the 8,000 people that were inside. We had food throughout the evening. We had hot chocolate late at night. We had a silent dance party, which was, on the midnight hour. And if you've never been to one, it's really kind of incredible because you don't hear anything. And then you put on the headphones and then you can hear the dance music. So we were trying to have it be quiet because there are noise ordinances in Aspen. But a silent dance party is actually not silent. It's filled with people singing very loudly out of tune. So that was interesting too. So this is, again, the panel with the Aspen Institute. And I think, there we go. So we also had sunrise yoga. We partnered with all the institutions that we usually partner with. So as Lisa said, we now have roof deck sculpture garden, and a commons out front. So we have been able to focus on and deepen our commitment to the 3 main guiding curatorial criteria that I had established when I first came to the museum. So I'll just tell you what you're looking at. So this is some of our education programming. We have an outdoor screening space, so we show movies most Friday nights out on the roof deck sculpture garden, and in the winter we just close the doors. This is, sorry, that's actually my daughter on the far left. They're sitting under a neon work which says everything's going to be okay. And they're sitting on Felix Gonzalez Torres' works, and they were told that they could do anything they want with them. The school that my kids go to does a mindfulness program, and so we collaborated with the school to bring mindfulness activities into the museum. So you see some people drawing on the Felix Gonzalez Torres, and you see my daughter and one of her friends meditating. So anyway, this is our education workshop space. This is a Gabrielle Corey exhibition, which is part of our Distinguished Artist in Residence program. This is a program that the museum had originally, but then had sort of let falter, so we brought that back. We have started also an educator in residence program where we bring an educator from somewhere in the world in to work with our education staff. Last year we had the director of learning from the Tate. This year we have the director of education from the Met coming, and through the director of learning from the Tate coming, we're now doing a partnership with Tate St. Ives, where they're in a sort of rural circumstance also, and we're creating teacher training opportunities cross institutionally. We also have a writer in residence program, and we have a curator in residence program too. So we've been thinking about Aspen as a place of retreat and transcendence, and we've been inviting people to come and spend time with us. We are doing a new program which is about this idea of kind of mindfulness and being present. And we're doing the first meeting this summer where the director of learning from the Tate is coming back, Franklin Sermons is coming, and a curator director from MoMA PS1 is coming as well. And it's just an open agenda. The idea is to just kind of talk about how can we extend the amount of time that people spend looking at works of art. How can we do it without technology? How can we do it as a form of solace, contemplation, and really trying to slow things down? This is our roof deck sculpture garden. This is a project by Alice Channer. We do commission a lot of the work that we show, and I talked a little bit before about Aspen being a destination, and we really wanted to make sure that we were not a museum in a destination, but rather a destination museum. So we realized that if we could show work for the first time, that people would travel to Aspen to see our exhibitions. And so that's been one of our guiding principles. And then sometimes our shows then travel off to other places. So this project then traveled to New York and was shown as part of a project by the Public Art Fund. This is our commons around the museum, and we talk about it as a place for people, plants, and art. Shigeru designed these benches that mirror the weaving of the screen, and this is a Miranda July work. This is an exhibition that was called The Stories We Tell Ourselves. It was all text-based art, and amazing Instagram responses to these works, not intended, but again, trying to put work out on the commons that gives people an interactive experience with the art. And we want people to be able to interact with art in a variety of circumstances, whether it's through your lift ticket, whether it's out on the commons, in a variety of ways, so that if then people can feel comfortable and empowered to come into the museum. And there are 5 key architectural elements to the building: the woven screen, the roof truss, the glass elevator, the grand staircase, walkable skylights. But 2 additional things are the commons, and then you can see on the right of the screen sort of this glass curtain wall. And Shigeru knows, like we all do, that contemporary art can be intimidating to people sometimes. So the idea was that you could stand on the outside, look in, see the work that you were going to see before you went in, and kind of orient yourself and make sure that you felt comfortable going in. So to get back to the exhibition criteria, all of our shows focus in one of three areas. So first, one-person museum exhibitions by a significant contemporary artist from somewhere around the globe. So amazingly, Chris O'Feely had never done a one-person museum exhibition in the United States. Through his own choice, after the response to his work at the Sensation Show at the Brooklyn Museum. So this is a show that was originated by the New Museum in New York, and we were the only other venue for it. We generate, I would say, 95 to 99% of our own shows, but we do take traveling shows when they are an artist or an idea that we would like to do ourselves, but someone kind of beat us to the punch. So this is the Chris O'Feely show. In the New Museum, it took the entire museum. For us, it filled 5 out of our 6 galleries, and this was the gallery that had the most recent work in it. Our galleries are actually bigger than the New Museum, so in addition to having space left over, Chris also made 4 new paintings specifically for us, and we added some earlier work as well, so the show was bigger. You see 2 of the paintings here on a painted wall. This is a wall that's painted of Chris's design, which was inspired by a blaxploitation film and was done over a 3-week period by 6 scenic painters from New York who work on Broadway. So the painting that you see on your far right was one of the, it was actually the most recent painting that Chris made. And it is an indicator, I think, of where his work is going next. And there was sort of a funny story where the paintings were still a little bit wet when they were transported. And when we opened this one up, and there's the New Museum registrar and our registrar and a courier from the Tate, and just a lot of people around. And as this painting got taken out of the crate, someone goes, "Lizard!" And in fact, there was a lizard on the back of the painting that had come all the way from Trinidad, where Chris painted the work, and it's now a pet of one of our install crews. So. This was the Gallery 2. This was the same gallery that some of the Klein Hammonds that I was showing you were in. This included the work of the Black Madonna, which was the work that caused all the controversy around the Brooklyn show. And there was a really interesting opportunity for us to educate our community about it and to do some preliminary work on that. And interestingly, a member of our guide staff, who unfortunately passed away just about 2 weeks ago, but was a Maasai, and he was talking with our team about dung and growing up in a dung house and giving a really amazing cultural perspective to this work that I think was kind of unexpected in Aspen. We were able to isolate these Afro-Muse drawings and give them a gallery all on their own, which wasn't able to happen in New York, and the work really looked glorious in that environment. So this is the work of Roberto Cooghi, who's a contemporary Italian artist, also first one-person museum exhibition in the United States. An artist that I had put in a group exhibition before, but works very slowly, is very sensitive and methodical about how his work is shown and where. But we were able to do this show, and we did it in conjunction with a museum in Lyon, France. And so we co-produced the exhibition, co-produced all the works, and were able to show that in this international partnership, so which worked very well for us. Some more work. I love this work because it looks ancient, but it also looks totally futuristic. So it looks like you could be in an Assyrian gallery, or it looks like you could have ended up on the 9th planet that they just found. So he works with really complex materials. He won't identify them, but they are often different than what you expect. So things that look light are actually very heavy. Things that look heavy are actually very light. And this whole show was inspired by the god Pazuzu, and Pazuzu was used as kind of like a talisman, like for good luck, what maybe we would carry in the 70s, like a rabbit's foot for, something like that. But the work was very much about this idea of trying to install some sense of order in the reality of chaos that is our life. And so, what do we do? Throw salt over our shoulder, or, say a blessing, or, how do we try and feel like there's some sense of being able to control our life or our destiny. And people were doing that 5,000 years ago. They're doing it today, and they'll probably be doing it 5,000 years into the future. So a lot of our exhibitions have, I think, an opportunity, as yours do here as well, to address larger social, emotional, psychological, intellectual issues. So we also do solo exhibitions by well-known artists, but an underknown or unseen body of work. So this was a Lucio Fontana ceramic exhibition. So this was an opportunity to, again, show an artist who is really, really well-known, but a body of work that most people really didn't know much about. And the work, there were some religious works in the show, and then also some pure abstraction. So being able to show that religious aspect of his practice was something that was really unique for that exhibition as well. And then same thing with Mark Bradford. Mark is an artist that's very well known today, but he was, is really known for doing these very, very large scale paintings and painting exhibitions. And so when I called Mark, I said, I'd like to do an exhibition of your merchant posters, and they had never been shown in an exhibition before, and we were able to do a scholarly publication around them as well. So, so here you see now hiring security guards, right? So we also do group exhibitions organized on a salient topic in contemporary society. So this is a show that I organized last year, which is called Second Chances. And for me, it was part of a trilogy of exhibitions that I curated that were addressing, using art really, to address sort of personal quest concerns. So there was a show, let's see if I can remember the names. The first one was called Belief and Doubt, and it was about how religion is shown in contemporary art today. The next one was called The Residue of Memory, and it was how the people that we interact with and the experiences we have, if they could leave a physical effect on us, like if each time someone shook your hand or kissed your cheek, if it left a physical residue, what it would look like. So art that was addressing that, and the show, it's about second chances. So everything from female artists who only started to make work after their male artist husbands died, to artists who were reusing materials and giving them a second life, or to artists who had undergone some sort of personal transformation that allowed them to make work as well. The materiality kind of having a second chance as well. This work on the left is a work by Nate Lohman, and it's the remnants of paintings that he made. So he's known for making these shaped canvases. So there was a flower on the left and an upside down heart on the right, and what he did, which were cut out of that blue work. So there was a blue flower and a blue heart, and then he took the drop cloths that he was working and standing on top of and filled them in and stitched them himself to give kind of a second chance to those materials as well. So that is my presentation, and I am happy to take questions on anything I discussed or anything you're curious about that I didn't talk about. Thank you for your attention.
Heidi, from a diversity standpoint, how do you engage the Native American community in the Aspen region?
So we actually don't have a Native American community really within our proximity, but we have a very strong Hispanic community. And we've started a program called Arte en Español. We've been collaborating with the local Spanish language radio station, and our director of learning is fluent in Spanish. I speak Spanish as well, and we've been doing basically guest appearances on the radio station and talking about art. We've also been asking the community what it is they would like to see, rather than just telling them what we have for them to come and participate in. So our first program we did we thought maybe we'd have 15 people or something like that, because that's what the museum had in the past. And this is a new program in the last year. But we had 60 people come. And then we said, okay, well, what would you like to see? And they wanted food and music. So we had food and music. And the next time we had 200 people come. And then they wanted an opportunity to, anyway, it just kind of has continued like that. So the next one is actually next weekend. And what they want to do is give presentations on the work that they do and the artistic aspect of it. So bringing in pictures of joinery in construction work, bringing in pictures of food, and looking at kind of the artistic aspects of the work that they're doing. So that's been really exciting for us. And when we've done some outreach after the fact, we said, well, what's the difference? Like, we've been trying to engage this community for years. Why is it now working? And the response that we got is because now we've been invited. And we thought we were inviting people before, by having ads and, sending out mailers and whatnot. But by actually going into the community and speaking in Spanish and offering the invitation in Spanish, people said, okay, now you've invited us, so since you've invited us, we have to come. So that's been interesting for us. So, yes, sir.
What was the process? What was the process of integrating this type of architecture into a community that's clearly chalet? And I mean, are there other buildings like this? And what all went on to get this to happen?
Many things went on. Some are, more publicly appropriate to discuss, and some are less. But I will tell you that Aspen has a small but long-term commitment to modern architecture. So there was Victorian architecture during the Victorian time. There has been some modern architecture, Bauhaus-style architecture during that period, and there is some contemporary architecture in Aspen. Now, there are, of course, different definitions of what contemporary architecture is, and, we have used this sort of chocolate and vanilla argument, which is that if you love chocolate, and I love vanilla, I cannot ever convince you that vanilla is better than chocolate, just like you can't convince me that chocolate is better than vanilla. So our approach in general has been to try and educate and empower people to have an opinion. And we say that it's okay if people don't like things. We say if you come and you don't like our exhibitions, come back again, because they change. That's one of the benefits of not having a collection and being an exhibition-oriented institution. Each time you come back, you'll see something different. So, the building does not look like any other building in Aspen, but frankly, we're the only museum in Aspen, and it shouldn't look like a t-shirt shop or a restaurant. It should look like what it is, a place to engage with and present contemporary art. So, has it been a smooth path? No. It hasn't. But, we like to say anything worth doing is hard. So, I can tell you that anyone who has been inside of our building has fallen in love with it. And if they come in because they've heard the food is good, or if they come in because their friend works there, or if they come in because it's raining and they're looking for shelter, it doesn't really matter. We're just trying to get people inside. And, is there a group of people, small but still, that swear on their life that they'll never go inside this building? Yes, but one by one, I think we're getting them all to come in. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your selection process for the architect. And given a building like this, I was curious to know who the structural engineer was.
So Shigeru is a design architect, and so we had a lot of consultants on the project. We used, and sometimes there were multiple consultants. So the primary structural engineer is a firm called KLNA, which is primarily based out of Eagle Vale. But Shigeru has always worked with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Bloomer, who is a timber structural engineer. And so Mr. Bloomer did the original calculations for the truss. And then Greg Kingsley from KLNA is the the primary structural engineer, and we still actually have him under a contract because it's a post-tension slab construction, and so we cannot go into the floor anywhere, and we show heavy and complex sculpture on the roof deck sculpture garden. So we run everything by Greg before we bring it in. So the selection process was quite interesting. We hired an architectural selection consultant. It was a firm that was actually unfortunately only short-lived, but fortunate for us that we got to work with them. Two gentlemen by the name of Casey Jones and Reed Kroloff, and they had a firm called Jones and Kroloff. And Casey heads up the GSA, and Reed was he used to be the editor of Architecture Magazine, and then he ran Cranbrook. And now I'm not sure what he's doing exactly. But so they were briefly architectural selection consultants. They worked with us to come up with our selection criteria. And while at first we thought it would be extensive, it's much harder to do something that's simple, but the simpler something is, the better it is. So we decided that our criteria was only two things. Number one, that the architects speak English. And number two, that the architect had built a museum before. And those are both really important things. So what they ended up doing was they put together a visual show and tell for us with 36 firms. And our committee was assembled, and we had a visual show and tell. The architects did not know who the client was, and for the most part, our committee did not know who the architects were. Of course, some were recognizable and whatnot, but no names. And everyone gave a score. And at the first scoring, Shigeru had the highest score. So then the next phase, and we set out our whole process in advance. So the next phase was to send out a request for qualifications, not proposals, but qualifications to the 16 firms that we had narrowed it down to. So we went 36 to 16. 14 out of the 16 responded, which was apparently a very, very high response rate. Again, the voting. At that point, the architects knew the client, we knew the architects, and it was narrowed down to 5. Those 5 firms came to Aspen on their own dime and gave presentations about their work. So not what they would do in Aspen, but about their practices, how they approach business, how they approach budgets and timelines, as well as the design practices that they had. And then it was narrowed down to 3. And at that point, the committee said, and at every point, Shigeru had gotten the highest score. And the committee said, can we just choose Shigeru now? And I said, no, you need to stick with the plan, because if something goes wrong, your friends and colleagues will hold you accountable for stepping away from what we'd agreed on. So then we traveled around the world literally in 6 days and visited the built projects and the offices of the architects, because we wanted to see the spaces that they worked in, we wanted to see the buildings that they had built, and then we sat down and had a unanimous vote to hire Shigeru Ban. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Heidi, sometimes people travel to Aspen to get away from their homes in the summertime. The traffic is more heavy maybe in the summer versus the winter. Does that present challenges for you when you're setting up exhibits?
Thank you. So when I came to Aspen, the museum was really just doing a concentrated exhibition program in the winter and the summer. And what they used to call the shoulder season, it was a less sophisticated program and much slower. And that was one of the first things that I changed when I got there, because I said, I'm moving to Aspen with my family. I live here full time, and I want to see great art all year round. And interestingly, around the time that I came, there were a lot of people, I would say similar to me, who had come from urban areas and wanted to raise their families somewhere where there was a different quality of life. And, with telecommuting, a lot of people were able to still work where they had lived before, but they were able to raise their families in Aspen. And I would say one of our big audiences is our local community. So we program year round, and people said to me, like, okay, you're going to do exhibitions year round, but don't do public programs, don't do education. But we've tested it, and people come to the museum all the time. And interestingly, we do have swell times, but we have almost entirely consistent attendance each week through the year. So, maybe it'll change, plus or minus 100 or 200 people, but people come to Aspen year round, and so that's how we program. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Your architectural process is incredibly thorough, and I'm just really curious about the development process. You raised $75 million. How long a period, what the process was, who helped, and how you survived?
I think one of our secrets, I think, to our success is that we do everything in-house. And that was one of the things that I did when I came. Brought everything in-house. Graphic design's in-house. All our fundraising is in-house. All our hiring is in-house. We don't have any consultants. We did it on a shoestring budget. We never printed a fancy brochure. We never did a flyover PowerPoint that would show the museum what it would look like in the future. We printed everything out on our color printer and did it as a kind of a grassroots way. I sat down basically with every donor. Oftentimes with one of my other donors, sometimes multiple. We had some starter gifts, that we went back to people. There were people that gave, 1, 2, 3 times, increasing their amount when they saw our need or saw the opportunity. And, I did feel at some point it was a little bit like an auction, because we started off with this $30 million goal, and then it became 35, 40, 45, 50, 65, 70, and every time we would kind of hit the goal, which I thought, we could never, ever hit that number, I would talk to, my bosses, the co-presidents, and they would say great, 75 million. I'd be like, why did I tell them we actually, got it to 70? But anyway, it was, it's a great project, and it's an incredibly generous community, and people saw the need and, I think wanted to be a part of it.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. It's fantastic to hear about the museum. I noticed that you mentioned producing several original scholarly publications for artists, and I was curious how much the production of publications is part of your mission, and how you think about publications separate from exhibitions.
Thank you. So one of the other things that we did right when I first came was to start a press. So we started something called the AAM Press, and we sit down as we budget each year and figure out how many books we can do. We usually do between 4 and 6 a year. Not all of them are extensive scholarly publications. Some of them are artist books. Some of them are compendiums or guides to a topic like performance, or we did sort of like a field guide to the work of Mark Manders. So I think that publications are really important, and the way I kind of pitched the idea to our board was that we are in a place that not everyone's going to come to, and so if we want to affect the long-term scholarship surrounding contemporary art, we need to have these publications that can be distributed. And so we did partner with DAP pretty early on, and they distribute our books internationally, and they actually co-produced the Shigeru Ban Humanitarian Architecture book with us. So that was the first time that we had actually collaborated to produce that book. And we do sort of small print runs. We usually print about 1,000 or 1,500 books, but when we did the collaboration with them, we printed 10,000 books. But that was kind of an unusual circumstance for us. But sometimes we use the Writer in Residence program to then have people write for our publications, or we really use those residencies to kind of import colleagues because we exist by ourselves basically, and then we try and come up with ways to audit what we're doing, see how we're doing, see what other people are doing. And we're doing a new publication this year. We've always had a members magazine, and we realized that it seems like kind of a waste of paper. We can communicate a lot of what's in there digitally, directing people to our website, and we're interested more in content. So, we're a non-collecting museum. We decided to do a publication that's going to be called Permanent Collection. Because what we've realized in the last little while is that while we don't collect objects, we collect artists and ideas. So we work with the same artists, kind of over and over again, and we explore the same ideas. So we'll be issuing our first issue of Permanent Collection this spring. And it has actually a text by Anthony Huberman, who used to work here, a really great piece on country music by Rodney Graham, a piece by Laura Hopman reflecting on the painting show, Painting Now, that she curated at MoMA this year, what she wanted the show to be and how people reacted. So there's also an interview that I had done with Marcia Tucker right before she died that's never been published. So looking back and kind of mining our own history and also looking forward at what we hope to do and packaging that together.
Well, thank you so much. It is wonderful to hear from you, and such a kind of joy and a thrill, I think, to talk about this both thoughtful but also dynamic space of the Non-Collecting Museum, and it's really, really exciting to see what you've done. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.